My boss showed up at my door a little after midnight, and the look on her face told me my quiet life was over. My name is Liam. I am 26, and I live alone in a small rental house on the outskirts of Denver, Colorado. It is a simple two-bedroom place with a cramped kitchen, dark wooden floors that creak when I walk, and a front porch where I hung warm yellow lights just to make the evenings feel less empty. I moved here right after college, working downtown at a mid-sized media company as a creative specialist. I come up with ad ideas, edit videos, and sit through meetings that feel like they never end. Most nights I come home, cook something easy, and let the routine carry me. 4 years ago, when I was 22, my parents died in a car accident. One day they were here, and the next day they were gone. No warning, no goodbye. I do not have siblings. I do not have family nearby, so I learned how to keep moving with my head down. Work during the day, silence at night, trails on weekends. Simple meals. Small habits that make grief easier to hide. That Saturday night felt normal. I made tuna salad on toasted bread. I ate at the small table by myself. Then I stood at the sink and rinsed my plate under steady water while the fridge hummed in the background. The clock ticked past 11:30 p.m. Outside, the neighborhood was still. A car passed on the main road every now and then, but mostly it was quiet. Then the knocking started. It was not a friendly knock. It was sharp and urgent. 3 quick knocks, a pause, then 3 more. My heart kicked up for no reason I could explain. Nobody comes to my house that late. I wiped my hands on a dish towel and walked to the front door. I turned on the porch light and leaned in to look through the peephole, but the angle was wrong. I only saw a shadow. I unlocked the door anyway. The cool night air rushed in, and I smelled rain from earlier in the day. When I opened the door fully, my breath caught in my throat. Charlotte stood on my porch under the soft yellow lights. Charlotte was my boss, the head of the creative department, the kind of woman who could quiet a whole room with a simple look. She was 38, sharp and steady at work, always in control. She wore a deep blue dress that fit her like it was made for her, with a thin cardigan resting on her shoulders like she had come from somewhere formal. Her dark hair, usually pinned back in the office, was loose around her face. Her eyes looked tired and red, like she had been holding in tears for hours. One hand held her key so tight her knuckles looked pale. For the past 2 years, she had lived in my mind in ways I never said out loud. I admired her, but it was more than that. I wanted her. I wanted her in that quiet, dangerous way you want someone you are not allowed to want. She was older. She was my boss. She was out of my league. So I trained myself to be calm around her. I smiled in meetings, did my work, and kept my feelings locked up where nobody could see. Now she was here, breathing hard on my porch like she had run out of air and came to borrow mine. Charlotte, I finally managed to say, and even her name sounded strange in my house. What are you doing here? She did not answer my question. She stepped forward, brushed past me, and walked into my kitchen like her body already knew the way. The door clicked shut behind her, and she sank into one of the wooden chairs at my small table. Her shoulders dropped like she had been holding herself upright with pure will until that second. She set her keys down with a hard clatter, then stared at the floor. I stood in the doorway, frozen. My mind raced so fast I could not grab a single thought. Was this real? Was something wrong? Was she in trouble? I tried to picture her like this in the office, and I could not. Charlotte did not crack. Charlotte did not show weakness. Charlotte did not come to the house of a 26-year-old employee in the middle of the night. She lifted her head slowly and looked straight at me. The intensity in her eyes made my stomach twist. "I'm done pretending, Liam," she said. Her voice was low and rough, like it had been scraped raw. "You're the one I want." I did not move. I did not breathe right. The words hit me like a door slamming in the dark. She swallowed, and her lips trembled. "I don't want to hide it anymore," she continued. "I want to stay here tonight." My chest tightened. My mouth went dry. 1,000 warnings screamed in my head. She was my boss. People would talk. This could ruin both of us. But another part of me, the part one kept buried under routine and grief and long, lonely nights, lit up like a match. I remembered the first time I felt it. 2 years ago. Late in the office, when she stayed behind to help me tighten a pitch. Her hand brushed mine as she pointed at the screen, and for 1 second, I saw past her calm face. I saw the weight she carried. After that, I noticed things. How she skipped office parties, how she stared out the window when she thought nobody was watching, how her smile sometimes came too late, like she had to force it. I wanted to ask her then. I wanted to tell her, but I never did. Now she was sitting at my table, and the air between us felt charged, like the room was waiting for me to choose. I did the only thing my hands knew how to do when I was scared. I moved to the stove and filled the kettle with water. I grabbed the mug from the cabinet. "Tea?" I asked, and my voice sounded steadier than I felt. She nodded, still watching me like she was afraid I would disappear. When the kettle warmed, I sat across from her. The table between us felt too small and too big at the same time. She slipped a ring off her finger, then another, and placed them beside her keys like she was taking off armor. "Rough night?" I asked softly. She gave a small, tired nod. "Yeah," she said, "you could say that." I poured hot water over a tea bag and slid the mug toward her. She wrapped her hands around it, and the steam rose between us. For a moment, we sat in silence. The clock ticked. The fridge hummed. The porch lights outside painted soft shadows on the floor. Charlotte took a sip, then set the mug down and stared at it like it held the answer to everything. "It was supposed to be just dinner," she said, almost like she was talking to herself. "My brother set it up. Another blind date." Her eyes lifted to mine again, and I saw something there that made my pulse jump. Fear, yes. Hurt, yes. But also decision. "I left," she said. "I walked out, and I didn't know where to go." She leaned forward slightly, her voice dropping even lower. "And then I ended up here." I stared at her, my heart pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat, because I knew the next thing she said would change my life. And I still did not know if I was about to save her, or lose everything I had left. Charlotte's fingers tightened around the warm mug, like it was the only thing keeping her steady. The steam curled up between us, and the kitchen felt smaller than it ever had. My house had always been my quiet space. Now it felt like the center of a storm. I did not rush her. I knew what it looked like when someone was holding on by a thread. I had lived that way after my parents died. You learn to keep moving. You learn to look normal. But one bad night can crack the whole thing open. Charlotte stared at the tea, then finally spoke like she could not keep the words inside anymore. "It was supposed to be a simple dinner," she said. "My brother set it up. Another blind date." Quote. Her voice held a sharp edge, but it was tired too, like she was angry at herself for going in the first place. "He's been pushing me," she continued, "ever since the divorce. He thinks he's helping, but it feels like he's trying to fix me." The word divorce landed heavy. I knew she had been married once. I had never asked questions. At the office, everyone respected her boundaries. She had this way of closing doors with a polite smile, and nobody dared push. "This guy," she said, letting out a bitter laugh, "some executive from a tech firm downtown. The kind of man who thinks a fancy restaurant and expensive wine makes him important." She looked up at me, and I saw her jaw clench. "The restaurant was beautiful," she said. "White tablecloths, candles, a view of the skyline. But it was wrong from the first minute. He talked about himself non-stop. His portfolio, his vacation home in Aspen, his car, a Tesla, of course." She shook her head slowly, like she was still hearing his voice in her ears. "Then he started talking about me," she said. I stayed quiet, but something in my chest tightened. I did not like where this was going. "He told me women like me," she said, her tone hard with sarcasm. "Women in our mid-30s should stop chasing promotions, that I should settle down. Find a stable guy. Have kids before it's too late." She paused, and her eyes flicked to mine like she was checking if I believed it too. "And then," she said, voice lower now, "he joked about the people I work with, the creatives, the younger ones, like it was some warning, like I'm wasting my time leading a team instead of waiting for a man to rescue me." The air in my kitchen felt thick. I wanted to say something sharp. I wanted to curse that guy. But Charlotte was not looking for rage. She was looking for someone to see her. I sat there, she said, smiling politely at first, nodding, playing the role. But inside, I could feel it building, like something boiling over. Her hands clenched on the mug, then loosened, then clenched again. "The divorce wrecked me, Liam," she said. "I spent 2 years in therapy. I rebuilt my life piece by piece. I worked hard to prove I didn't need anyone to define me. And in one dinner, that man tried to shove me back into some outdated script. I did not think. I just reached across the table. My hand hovered for a second because I knew the line I was crossing. Then I gently placed my hand over hers. Her skin was cool. Her fingers trembled. The touch sent a quiet shock through me, because it was not like shaking hands in a meeting. It was real. It was personal. She did not pull away. Instead, she turned her palms slightly, and our fingers slipped together, careful at first, like she was testing if it was safe. "I couldn't take it anymore," she said. Halfway through dinner, I told him I wasn't feeling well. I stood up and walked out. I pictured it, Charlotte, in that fancy place, standing up while some man stared in surprise, and for a second I felt proud of her. Then I felt angry all over again for what pushed her to that moment. "I went outside," she said. "I hailed a cab. I didn't even know where I wanted to go. The driver asked me for an address, and I just said, 'Drive, east, anywhere.'" She swallowed. "We circled the city," she said, "past downtown, past the office building, past that park where I see you sometimes at lunch." My heart jumped at that. She noticed me more than I thought. "And then," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "without thinking, I gave him your address." I stared at her. The question was sharp in my mind. Why me? Why my small, quiet house? Why my door at midnight? "How did you even remember it?" I asked softly. She let out a shaky breath. "I don't know," she said. "Maybe from that team event when we filled out emergency contacts. Maybe because I've paid attention to you more than I should have. I just know when the cab turned onto your street, my hands were shaking." Her eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back, stubborn even in her pain. "I've been pretending for so long," she said. "Strong at work, composed in meetings, acting like nothing touches me, brushing off every advance like it's easy. But tonight, it cracked." Quote. She lifted her chin, and her gaze locked on mine. "I realized I don't want to go back to my apartment and sit in silence," she said. "I don't want the loneliness. I don't want the expectations. I don't want to keep performing strength for people who don't care what it costs." Her fingers tightened around mine. "And you," she said, "you've always looked at me like you see through it." My throat felt tight. I wanted to deny it. I wanted to keep us safe, but the truth was already sitting between us like another person at the table. "I have," I admitted, and my voice came out rough. "I've seen it. I just never thought I had the right to say anything." She leaned forward slightly, and my heart hammered like I was running. "I know this could explode," she said. "Gossip, judgment, work, the age gap, everything." She paused, and her eyes searched mine like she was asking a question without saying it. "I'm 38, she said. "You're 26. People will talk." I took a slow breath. My hand still held hers, and I realized I did not want to let go. "I've carried loneliness too," I said quietly. "Since my parents died, it's not the same as what you've been through, but I know what it feels like to come home and feel nothing waiting for you." Her expression softened, and for the first time that night, her face looked less guarded. "I didn't come here to ruin you," she said, voice shaking. "I came here because you feel like the one place I can breathe." The words hit me deep, because I knew what it meant to need a place to breathe. The clock ticked louder now. Past midnight. The tea cooled. Our hands stayed linked. Charlotte stood up slowly, like she was deciding something. She walked around the table, stopping right in front of me. I rose too, because something in me knew sitting was no longer possible. We were close enough that I could smell her perfume, soft and clean, mixed with the faint night air still clinging to her cardigan. Her eyes lifted to mine. "Tell me to go," she said, almost pleading. "If you want me to leave, say it now." My heart slammed against my ribs because I knew if I didn't tell her to go, then the next thing that happened would change everything we were. I should have told her to go. That would have been the smart thing, the safe thing, the thing that kept my life quiet and predictable. But when Charlotte stood in front of me, eyes shining, waiting for me to decide, I realized I had been living safe for years, and it had not saved me from loneliness. It had only taught me how to survive it. I swallowed, my throat tight, and I shook my head once. "Don't go," I said. Her shoulders dropped like she had been holding her breath for hours. The relief on her face was so raw it hurt to look at. For a second, she just stood there, and then she stepped closer. Not rushing, not demanding, just close enough that I could feel her warmth in the air between us. "Thank you," she whispered. I didn't know what to do with my hands. I didn't know what to do with my heart, so I did what felt honest. I reached up and cupped her cheek, careful, like she might break. Her skin was soft. Her eyes fluttered closed for a moment, and the sound she made was small, like she had been starving for tenderness and didn't want to admit it. I leaned in and kissed her. It wasn't wild. It wasn't messy. It was quiet and slow, like both of us were afraid of turning it into something we couldn't control. But it was real. It was the kind of kiss that carries years of holding back. The kind that says, "I chose you," without needing more words. When we pulled apart, her eyes stayed on mine. "I didn't come here to play," she said softly. "I know," I said. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was heavy, meaningful, like we were standing at the edge of a new life, and we could both see the drop. I stepped back first, because I needed to breathe. "Come on," I said. "Sit. Let me get you something else. Food, maybe." She shook her head. "I'm not hungry." "Still," I said, trying to steady myself. "You look like you haven't eaten in years." That got a small smile out of her. It wasn't big, but it was real. It eased something in my chest. I moved around the kitchen, more for my own nerves than for her. I turned off the kettle, I rinsed the mug. I put the tea bag in the trash. Simple actions that made the moment feel less like a dream. When I looked back, she was watching me, her posture softer now, but her eyes still intense. "You're nervous," she said. I let out a short laugh. "Of course I'm nervous." She stood and walked toward me again, stopping by the counter. "You can tell me to slow down," she said. "You can tell me anything." That startled me. It was the first time I had heard Charlotte ask for permission in any way. At work, she was the one giving direction, the one setting the pace. Now she was looking at me like she wanted me to set the rules. "I want you here," I said. "But I don't want you to wake up tomorrow and regret it." Her face tightened. "I won't regret coming here." "I mean us," I said, voice low. "I don't want you to feel like you were desperate and I took advantage of it." Her eyes hardened with a flash of pride. "Liam, I walked into your house because I chose it. I chose you." Quote. Those words hit me deeper than I expected. I nodded slowly. "Okay." She exhaled, and the tension in her shoulders softened again. I led her down the hallway and opened the bedroom door. "You can have the bed," I said. "I'll take the couch." Her eyes widened slightly. "You don't have to do that." "I want to," I said. "Not because I don't want you, because I do, and that's the problem. I want you so much I don't trust myself to think straight right now." Her lips parted like she wanted to argue. Then she stopped. Her gaze softened, and she nodded. "You're a good man," she said quietly. The words made me feel exposed. I wasn't used to anyone saying that with certainty. I handed her a clean towel and one of my extra toothbrushes still in a package from a travel set. She took them like she belonged there, and somehow that felt both comforting and terrifying. When she came out of the bathroom a few minutes later, she had washed her face and brushed her hair back. The tiredness was still there, but she looked calmer, more like herself. I grabbed an old hoodie and a blanket from the hall closet and set them on the couch. At the end of the hallway, Charlotte paused by the bedroom door. She looked back at me. "Liam," she said, voice soft. "Yeah. If I had knocked on your door and you had told me no," she said, "I think it would have broken me." My chest tightened. I walked closer, stopping in front of her. "I'm glad you knocked," I said. She stared up at me like she was memorizing my face. Then she reached up, touched my jaw with her fingertips, and kissed me again. A little deeper this time. A little more certain. When she pulled away, she whispered, "Good night." "Good night," I said. I watched her step into the bedroom and close the door. Then I stood there for a long time in the dark hallway, listening to the quiet of my house. The same quiet that used to feel normal. Tonight it felt like it was holding its breath. I lay on the couch, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My mind kept swinging between two truths. I wanted her, and this could destroy everything. Around 2 in the morning, I heard the bedroom door open. Soft footsteps padded down the hall. Charlotte appeared in the dim light, wrapped in the blanket I had left on the bed. "I tried," she whispered. "I can't sleep." I sat up immediately. "Do you want water? More tea?" She shook her head and walked closer. "I don't want to be alone in there," she said. The way she said it cracked something in me. Not in a dramatic way. In a simple way. Like she was finally letting someone witness the part of her that got scared. I shifted on the couch. "You can sit here." She sat down beside me, but the couch was small. Our shoulders touched. Her breathing was unsteady. "I hate how this feels," she said, "like I'm falling apart." I turned slightly to face her. "You're not falling apart. You're finally not pretending." Her eyes filled, and she looked away fast like she hated tears. I reached for her hand. "Come here." She hesitated for half a second, then leaned in, resting her head on my shoulder. I wrapped an arm around her, holding her close, feeling the warmth of her body through my hoodie. We stayed like that, quiet, listening to the house settle, the creak of old wood, the distant hum of the city far away, her breath slowly easing into a calmer rhythm. After a while, she whispered, "Tomorrow morning I have to go back to being Charlotte again." "You don't have to be alone in it," I said. She looked up, and her eyes locked on mine. "What if this ruins you?" she asked. "You're young. You have your whole career ahead." I swallowed. "My career matters. But you matter too." Her face softened, and she pressed her forehead lightly against mine. "I don't want to hide anymore," she said. The words were the same as before, but now they felt heavier. More permanent. I opened my mouth to answer, but my phone buzzed on the coffee table, loud in the quiet room. I glanced at the screen, and my stomach dropped. It was a message from Marcus, one of the senior managers at work. It was sent at 2:17 a.m., and it said, "We need to talk first thing Monday. It's about you and Charlotte." Quote. My blood ran cold as Charlotte lifted her head and saw my face change. "What is it?" she asked. I couldn't lie, not with her this close. I turned the phone toward her so she could read it. And the moment her eyes landed on the words, the warmth between us vanished, replaced by a fear neither of us had named out loud yet. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The message sat on the screen like a threat we could not pretend was not real. Charlotte's face went still, but I could see the strain in her eyes. At work, she could handle any client, any deadline, any crisis. This was different. This was personal, and it had teeth. "We need to be smart," she said quietly. My stomach felt hollow. How did he know? She shook her head once. He might not know, not for sure, but someone saw something, or someone guessed. All it takes is one person paying attention. I looked at the clock on the wall. It was past 2. In a few hours the sun would come up, and the world would feel normal again. But nothing would be normal. Charlotte reached for my hand, squeezing it hard. "Listen to me, Liam. Whatever happens, we do not panic. We do not hide. We do not make this messy." I nodded, even though my heart was racing. "Okay." She took a slow breath. "Tomorrow, I go home. Sunday stays quiet. Monday, we handle it." The word handle made me feel steadier. She was already building a plan, already anchoring herself. I admired her for that, but it also scared me because it meant she was taking this seriously. She was not going to disappear and pretend the night never happened. When morning came, sunlight poured through my thin curtains and made the kitchen look softer than it had any right to. I woke on the couch with a stiff neck. I heard movement in the kitchen, the clink of a pan, the hiss of the coffee maker. I walked in and found Charlotte wearing one of my old button-up shirts, sleeves rolled to her elbows. She was making eggs and toast like she belonged here. She glanced at me and offered a small smile. Morning. For a second, the fear faded. She looked like a real person, not my boss, not some impossible woman from my daydreams. Just Charlotte, in my kitchen, making breakfast. We ate in a quiet rhythm, coffee in mismatched mugs, eggs, toast, a little butter melting on top. The silence wasn't awkward. It was heavy with what we both knew was coming. After a few minutes, she set her fork down and looked straight at me. "We need to take the power imbalance off the table," she said. I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean, I can't be your direct supervisor," she said. "Not if we're doing this for real. Not if we want to protect you and protect me." My pulse picked up again. "So what do we do?" She leaned forward, voice calm but firm. "I'm going to recommend a transfer for you to the advanced creative team. You'll report to Marcus instead of me. It makes sense on paper, and it makes sense for your career. You've earned it." I stared at her. That team handled bigger clients, high-pressure work, more visibility. It was a step up I had hoped for someday, but I never asked. I didn't want anyone thinking I was getting favors. "I don't want you to get blamed for helping me," I said. Her eyes softened. "Liam, your work speaks for itself. This will not be a gift. It will be a decision backed by your results. If anyone questions it, I will stand on the truth." Something in my chest loosened, not because I loved the idea of change, but because she was fighting for us in a way that wasn't reckless. She was making it safer. I nodded. "Okay. If we do this, we do it right." That afternoon, she stood at my front door with her cardigan in her hands. She looked tired again, but steadier. "I meant what I said," she told me. "You're the one I want." I swallowed. "And I meant what I said too. Don't go away." She stepped closer and kissed me, slow and sure, like a promise she planned to keep. Then she left, walking down my porch steps into the bright day, and I watched her go with my heart in my throat. Monday came fast. The office felt colder than usual, like the air knew something I didn't. Marcus asked me to come to his office first thing. I walked in with my hands sweating, trying to look normal. He shut the door, folded his arms, and studied me. "Liam," he said, "I'm going to be direct. There are rumors about you and Charlotte." My mouth went dry. "Rumors." He nodded. "Nothing formal, nothing proven, but I don't like surprises and I don't like mess. If there's a situation, we address it early." I forced myself to breathe. Charlotte's words echoed in my head. "Don't panic, don't hide. I care about her," I said, "and I respect her, but I also respect the company and my work." Marcus held my gaze. "Are you currently reporting to her?" "Yes," I said. He looked down at a file on his desk. "She's already requested a transfer for you to my team." My heart stuttered. "She did." "She did," he confirmed. "And the request is backed by your performance. You've been doing strong work. The advanced team could use you." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Here's what's going to happen. You move teams. You keep your work clean. No public drama. No office games. If you and Charlotte are involved, you keep it professional in this building. If anyone files a complaint, it will be investigated. Understand?" I nodded. "I understand." He held my gaze a second longer, then gave a short nod, like the conversation was done. "Good. Now go earn the transfer." When I walked out, my legs felt shaky, but I wasn't crushed. We weren't crushed. The transfer happened quickly, a meeting with HR. A couple of signatures. A polite announcement that I was moving to the advanced team based on recent contributions. On paper, it looked clean. But people notice everything. Whispers started in the break room. Looks lingered a little too long. One coworker smirked during lunch and said, "Nice upgrade, Liam. Must be good to be close with leadership." I laughed it off, but it stung. Every compliment felt like it came with doubt attached. Every success felt like it might be questioned. I worked harder than I ever had. Not because I wanted to prove myself to strangers, but because I refused to let anyone rewrite my story. Late nights. Tight deadlines. New clients who didn't care about office rumors, only results. Charlotte carried her own weight too. People tested her with quiet questions, polite doubts hidden behind professional language. She didn't break. She didn't lash out. She stayed steady, but I saw the toll it took when she came to my house at night, shoulders tight, eyes tired. One evening she showed up after a long client dinner, still wearing her blazer, and the moment I shut the door, she fell into my arms like she had been holding herself together all day, just to fall apart here. "Rough day," I said softly. Her breath shook. There was an anonymous complaint. My stomach dropped. "To HR." She nodded against my shoulder. "Favoritism. Conflict of interest. They said I gave you the transfer because of personal reasons." Anger rose hot in my chest, but Charlotte pulled back, eyes wet. "I used to be so strong," she whispered. "Why do I feel weak now?" I held her face gently, forcing her to look at me. "You are not weak, you are human. And you didn't do anything wrong." Her lips trembled. "What if this ruins you?" "It won't," I said. "I'm going to keep earning my place. And you're going to keep leading the way you always have. We stand together. That's it." She didn't answer with words. She just leaned into me again, and I held her until her breathing slowed. Weeks turned into months. The gossip never fully vanished, but it grew quieter as my work got louder. I landed a major contract for a national brand campaign. The client praised my ideas in a review meeting. My name showed up in an industry newsletter tied to our work. People started congratulating me without the smirk. Charlotte kept setting firm boundaries at work. When someone tried to hint about staffing decisions, she shut it down calmly. "My choices are based on talent," she said. "If anyone has concerns, talk to me directly." Most people backed off after that. In the middle of all that pressure, we found ways to breathe. One Friday, I stopped at a florist on the way home and bought white daisies. I remembered her mentioning them once, almost casually, saying they reminded her of her college days when she used to sit in parks and sketch. When I handed them to her at my door, her eyes widened like she couldn't believe I remembered. "You remembered," she said, voice soft. "I did," I said. She held the flowers like they mattered, and in that moment, the office noise felt far away. We started building small traditions, cooking dinner together. Cheap wine on the porch under my yellow lights, her reading poetry on my couch while I edited work on my laptop. Quiet laughter when I burned pasta, her teasing me like she had known me forever. One weekend, I booked a small cabin in the Colorado mountains. Nothing fancy, just a one-room place with a wood stove and a porch facing pine trees. No emails, no meetings, no watching our shoulders in hallways. We hiked a gentle trail, our hands brushing, then holding. At a clearing, we spread a blanket and sat under a wide sky, reading quietly like the world had finally slowed down enough to let us exist. She set her book down and looked at me. "You don't have to be perfect to be enough for me," she said. "Just be here." Quote. Those words settled something inside me that had been restless for years. The grief, the loneliness, the feeling that love was something other people got. With her, it felt possible. A year passed from that midnight knock. My little rental house became less lonely without me even noticing when it happened. Charlotte started leaving pieces of herself behind. A mug in my cabinet. A stack of poetry books on my nightstand. A sweater draped over the chair. She didn't move in with a big announcement. She just became part of my life in the quiet ways that mattered most. At work, my place was solid. I wasn't anyone's pet. I was a lead on real projects. My team respected me. The whispers died out because there was nothing left to feed them. One crisp fall evening, I came home and found Charlotte in my kitchen, humming softly to a jazz record on my old turntable. The smell of roasting vegetables filled the room. The porch lights outside glowed warm against the dark. I set my bag down and wrapped my arms around her from behind, pressing a kiss to her shoulder. "Smells like heaven," I murmured. She turned with a smile that made my chest feel full. "Rough day," she said, handing me a glass of wine. Not anymore, I said. After dinner, we sat on the porch steps under the yellow lights, the air cool and clean. Stars peeked through thin clouds. She rested her head on my shoulder, and for a while we just breathed together. Ever regret it? I asked quietly. Choosing me. The age gap. The complications. She lifted her head and looked at me like the question wasn't even hard. I only regret that I didn't knock sooner, she said. You gave me back parts of myself I thought were gone. My throat tightened. I took her hand, lacing my fingers with hers the same way we did at my kitchen table that first night. I used to think I was going to be alone forever, I admitted. After my parents died, I stopped expecting anything good to stay. Her eyes softened. I'm here, she said. I'm staying. I pulled her closer, and the loneliness that had lived in my house for years felt like a memory from someone else's life. Later, in bed, she whispered into the dark, there will be more challenges. Tomorrow or next year. But as long as we're together, we'll be fine. I squeezed her hand under the covers, feeling her warmth beside me, steady and real. That midnight knock had been fear and risk and longing all at once. But it had also been a doorway. And now, every evening, when the porch lights flickered on and she walked through my front door, I knew we hadn't ruined our lives. We had finally started living them,